I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about psychology and true crime. Today, we are taking a break from our true crime coverage to talk about a Netflix series called Adolescence. This is a 4 episode series, and I will warn you, I will be providing some spoilers in this review. So if you want to watch the series, I think it was really well done. I was concerned before watching it that it was going to be too intense. I will warn you, episode 3 is where the juvenile, whose name is Jamie, he is 13 years old. He is interviewed by a forensic psychologist that was hired by the defense. And that episode was very like that episode was very intense, and we are going to break that one down. Thank you, Lisa, for recommending this series. A few other people recommended it as well. And like I said, I was concerned that it was going to be really intense. To me, the Menendez brothers story, like that one was just so intense. This one, they don't really sometimes the most intense moments, they're focusing on someone else's face and you're hearing something intense, but you're not seeing it or you're seeing people's reactions. I think the filming and how this was made, I think it was done really well. And I am also going to share some information about risk factors for adolescent violence and then also talk a little bit about adolescent violence statistics too. And the links to those are down in the description. All right. And Lisa, you haven't watched it, but you saw other YouTube psychologists review it. So that's super cool. I have not watched anyone else's coverage, and so it'll be interesting to see if there are any differences between some of my thoughts and what some other people have said. In episode 1, it opens with Jamie being arrested. Once again, Jamie is 13 years old. He is the teenage boy in this series, and the police come in with weapons drawn, and the family, because the family is at home, and they're of course like taken aback by everything. This is set in the UK, and so I'll talk about it later because there was a word used and I didn't know what it meant, and so I had to look up slang and I was able to figure out what it meant. But the series is set in the UK. The parents insist that he's done nothing wrong, and they don't really know at this point what's going on or why they are there. The officer that arrested him recommended that he ask to speak to a solicitor. And in the UK, solicitor is the same word for lawyer. And um and I thought it was interesting because the officer brings it up later. I don't know if it's an officer or detective. It might be a detective that's interviewing him. The detective later says, "Hey, don't you remember? I recommended that you talk to a lawyer." And so it is almost like he used that to have him trust him or to be on his side. And once Jamie is arrested, they do have a mental health professional, it seemed, based on how everything was set, because somebody is just asking if he's competent to stand trial. Like, does he understand the charges that he's been charged with? Does he understand the role of the lawyer and all of that? And so they're just kind of asking him some screening questions. I did a internship. No, it wasn't internship. I did a practicum rotation at a juvenile intake center where I would screen the kids for trauma and then also risk to self and others. And so every student that came through this juvenile detention center, they were screened for history of negative life events. And then also they were screened for risk to self and others. And that evaluation kind of reminded me of our standard juvenile intake. Um, all right. All right. And so thank y'all for commenting. I'm going to focus on the notes so I don't get distracted. I will also note that you really do not see a lot of emotion from Jamie until he is caught. And that can happen. Individuals with a psychopathic or antisocial traits, sometimes you will see crying, you will see a lot of emotion around getting caught, but you may not see that same emotion with the crime that they are charged with. And with Jamie, like when he's cornered and he realizes that he's caught, that's when you see a lot of emotion. And he asked his dad, "Do you believe me that I haven't done anything?" And he just repeatedly just wanted his dad's approval, like, "Do you believe that I didn't do it?" And that's going to be important a little bit later, and I will talk about that a little bit more. The father got upset when they needed to have him understandably. So I will say understandably, the father was upset when they needed him to they needed to search his body for any cuts or bruises. And I forgot to mention that during this process, his father was his, let me find the wording because it's specific wording. His father was his, I know the word, and it's escaping me right now, was his appropriate adult. So because he was under the age of 13, Jamie was able to select someone to be his appropriate adult, to be with him during all of his questioning, during meetings with his lawyer, and also during any, like when they were getting DNA and they were collecting any evidence. And Jamie specifically asked for his dad, Eddie, to be that person. And Jamie's lawyer, and then also the detective were kind of like, "Are you sure you want it to be your dad?" Because during the interrogation with Jamie, uh, his lawyer recommended that they take a break, and his dad was like, "Oh no, let's keep going." And it probably would have been good if they had taken a break at that moment, but it was a whole thing. All right. I do not believe that this is based on a true story. I think this is completely fictionalized, and I think the writer. I don't know if there have been any interviews. Y'all can let me know in the chat. I think there is a behind the scenes. There's some behind the scenes information on this. I haven't watched that yet. Okay, I haven't watched it. Um, I thought that the therapist that interviewed him did a decent, but we'll get to that when we talk about episode 3, all right? I'm gonna stay focused. All right, no squirrels, no ADHD moments yet. We'll see. All right. Uh the lawyer meets with Jamie and his dad privately, and the lawyer's just trying to build rapport by asking, "Oh, so what's your favorite subject?" And Jamie gets a little defensive, like, "Why are you asking me dumb questions?" And you could kind of see some traits where Jamie likely was very intelligent, very smart, but it's almost like he thinks he can outsmart people and he might think he's the brightest. And if somebody asked him a dumb question, you would see a response from him. And so I made note of that. Um, Wow. Deacon Fatal, all the scenes were done in one take. Wow. I thought the acting was really good. I fast forward episode 4 was a little slow for me, so I think I watched it on 1.5, like I sped it up a little bit. Episode 4, and then the end was powerful, but I did speed up episode 4 a little bit. All right, let's get back to my notes. Um, and Jamie kept insisting, "I haven't done anything wrong." And that doesn't mean that he didn't do the thing, but he just kept saying, "I haven't done anything wrong." And his dad directly asked him if he did it, and Jamie said no. But Jamie wasn't aware of some things that were gonna come out a little bit later in his police interrogation with the detectives or officers. I'm not sure, which one that was. Um, And I did think it would have been better if Jamie had sorry, yeah, if Jamie had had a neutral appropriate adult instead of his dad. Because I think his dad wanted him to talk and wanted him to share, like he wanted to prove that he was innocent, and his dad didn't think that he had anything to hide. But then some things happened later. All right. Um the lawyer gave him information to say no comment if he was asked a question like, "Where were you that last night?" If he was asked specific questions that relate to the crime, to not answer those questions, but that he could answer questions about, like, his name, or, like, he could answer questions that weren't related to the crime. And, Jamie, of course, denied being aggressive or doing anything to her. Uh, he claimed that he was confused with someone else. We learned during the interrogation that she was, I can't say the word yet, but that someone used a knife 7 times. And that's when the lawyer asked for a break, because I think the lawyer knew that they likely had some concrete evidence. And, before they brought up the CCTV footage, the lawyer says, "I think we should take a break." And the dad was like, "No, let's continue." And the police press play, and they show CCTV footage of his movements and that he appears to be following Katie. Katie is the classmate, the girl in this series that was unalived. All right. The father encourages him to answer questions, and Jamie keeps saying, "I haven't done anything wrong." And then the police play the recording that Jamie was recorded doing the incident, doing the actual act. And Jamie is crying, and dad looks incredibly confused, because I think the dad wanted to believe his son. I think the dad desperately wanted to believe that his son was innocent and that his son hadn't done anything. But then they're playing a video, and you see exactly what happened. Um so I watch, because somebody mentioned wanting to know more about UK law while watching everything. And I don't know if Karen, because Karen is a UK lawyer, sometimes she answers questions, or sometimes she covers things on her channel. Um, oh wow, I didn't know that. The music you hear in one of those scenes is wow, was maybe it was by the young actress? Cool, playing Katie, cool. I guess it was a really good show. It was really, really good. Um, and then during the police interrogation, you learn that Jamie threw away his clothes, and, um, and then at the end of it, after they see the video, the lawyer and the police leave Jamie to talk with his dad. Um, Karen, UK lawyer, I'm almost positive. You'll see her in the chat sometimes. I think she's been covering a little bit of Karen Reed and some other things, but yeah. Right. But I think if you type in Karen, UK lawyer, I think it will come right up. Let's get back to the notes. So then we get to episode 2. And it starts, and in the front of the school there is this memorial to Katie, to the girl that died. And both students attended the same school. uh, the detectives interview Jade, Katie's best friend, and Jade gets incredibly upset because the police have found social media posts where that Jamie had posted, and Katie had commented on some of his posts, and the police thought that she was interacting with him in a positive way. But later you find out that she was actually um, that so you find out some information later. We will get to that in a second. Because Jade, Katie's best friend, gets incredibly upset when the detectives ask her about, like, were they friends? And Jade is very like she's like, no, they're not friends. Jade ends up attacking a student. The school was extremely chaotic. The school, like, no, the kids were just running things. Nobody had any control of anything, and it was just it was a lot. I will look for it at the very end, and I can put it in the chat. Let me see. Y'all know I like to do things in the moment. Karen Cole, UK lawyer. Legal-minded friends, Karen Cole. Like that's I will put it here we go. I'll put it in the chat. Whew. All right. So we're on episode 2, and then you find out that Katie was referring to him as an incel, and then you hear this 80-20 rule that 80% of men, oh, sorry, 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men, and that men have to do something to trick them. And that's where, so I had heard that some toxic masculinity, that some like, um, the guy that's on trial, I'm so bad with names. Toxic. Uh, I said toxic YouTuber arrested, Andrew Tate. That people they I think they mentioned Andrew Tate's name or somebody like that. They mentioned somebody like that's name in the show, and they don't play any of the information, but that um Katie had posted red pill, blue pill, like that, and that she was pretty much saying that he was an incel, involuntary celibate, that he was going to be a virgin forever. And no matter, because even if she had done, even if that's what she meant, to me, that didn't give him a reason to do what he did. Yes, it was the detective's son was the one that that said all of that. Y'all know I have to have a squirrel at some point. Like it's fine. That's why I do this live. It is fine. All right. All right. So the detective's son pulls his father to the side because he's like, "You're messing up this investigation. Like you're asking all these questions, but you're not asking the right questions." And so that's when the detective's son, who attends that school, provides his father with that information. And you find out that the knife belonged to Jamie's friend Ryan, and Ryan, because the police want to talk to him, and he runs from the police, ends up getting arrested, and the episode ends with Jamie's father taking flowers to Katie's memorial. So you see that. Oh, y'all. Now for episode 3. This episode was so intense. And it starts with the psychologist checking into the jail, and she brings him some hot chocolate. We learn that this is her second meeting with him, and she also brings him half of a sandwich that's made the way that he likes it, because he doesn't like certain things, like no salad, no, or like no lettuce. Like he liked his sandwich a certain way, and she provided him with half of a sandwich. And I would never provide somebody I was evaluating in a juvenile, like somebody that had a history of violence. I would never give them hot chocolate because, like, they could, that could be used against you later. It just could. Um Future, it was a very intense show. Let me know if y'all have questions about anything. I thought episode 3 was one of, like, it was a very, very it was a very, very good episode. So I used to do intensive in-home counseling. So Lisa asked, have I ever had a client that was aggressive and scary? So I used to do intensive in-home therapy, and I also worked in residential. So I worked for 6 months. I only lasted 6 months because I was getting attacked all the time, or other people were getting harmed, and it didn't feel therapeutic. The place I was working, I was working with the youngest kids. I tried to give some feedback to one of the therapists because I was just a behavior aide. I was just somebody that was supposed to observe the students, make sure that everybody was safe. We would have activities for them after school and on the weekends, and I made good observations about some of the clients. I was working on my doctorate at the time, and the therapist just completely blew me off, and so I was just like, "This not the place for me." I ended up leaving. The most important thing, if you are working with somebody that's aggressive and scary, is to not show fear. And the therapist in the show, I think, tried to do that. And I'm going to talk about that as we go through that. I've had clients pull out weapons on themselves, pull out a weapon, but like not so like uh, and I worked with a lot of people that had personality concerns or like budding personality issues. And so the biggest thing is to stay calm. And we would try to see when things were escalating. But there were times when things would escalate without warning. With outpatient therapy, I have had somebody like yell and scream at me, and I immediately took a breath and stopped the session. During this episode, the psychologist that's meeting with Jamie, she kind of goes back and forth with him a little bit. And I don't know if that was her assessing his danger, his potential risk, because she was hired by the defense, and her goal was to um, do a pre-sentence report. Like that was the goal of her assessment. And and so we will talk about that a little bit later. And so are parents easy to work with in situations like this? So you want to try to catch it before the child is incarcerated. So if you can catch it early, that's where intensive family therapy can sometimes be helpful. I did notice some things about dad, and some things come up in episode 3 that gives us some information about his relationship with his dad. No parent is perfect. And in episode 4, we find out about dad's history and kind of why dad parented the way that he did. Um, but kids need boundaries. They need so you have to balance love and discipline. So you can't be all discipline and you can't be all love. You have to kind of balance the two, which is not an easy task. And then sometimes when someone is showing signs of aggression, and or there are some red flags, that's when there are certain types of therapy that can be really helpful. Multisystemic family therapy, MST, that is one. Um, there were so many questions, I think. So I don't think the show was meant to like say what was the problem or what wasn't the problem. I really think their goal was to make people think. I think that was the goal. All right. It was very, very thought provoking. Um, And so the therapist asked him, so the psychologist, I'll use psychologist and therapist interchangeably. It's the same thing. She's doing a mental health assessment of him. She had him talk about his family and discussed masculinity. Uh his language was aggressive and combative at times, I thought, even when he was calm. And then there were certain trigger times, um, towards the middle and end of their session, and he would get upset when he thought she was asking dumb questions. and she felt like Jamie felt like she was trying to trick him by asking questions about him and his family, and he became very upset. He actually, like, threw the hot chocolate, and I have a picture of the therapist. Um, Let me change my view. There we go. And so they are sitting far apart. And there are times where she moves closer and closer to him. And I think she moved closer to him to prove that she wasn't afraid. And it was to get in his space because he seemed to want to dominate and, like, to take up space and to almost intimidate her. And I think she wanted to show that she wasn't intimidated. And during this entire session, there was a staff member standing right outside the door, and there were times where the staff member for the detention center came inside just to check to make sure that everything was okay. I have done psychological testing in juvenile treatment since, so in facilities like this. Normally the rooms didn't have a window. It was normally just like a block. It was normally just like a block room, and there would be a camera. And if I wanted to leave or if the student had to use the bathroom or anything, I would stand up and, like, wave my hands because that would alert the control center that that I needed a staff to come unlock the door. So I was in a locked room with the student. I always stayed across from them. I never sat directly beside them. I never came close to them. I don't do forensic assessments. So I was doing general psychological evaluations. There were times when the family would come and I would meet with the family at the juvenile center, or sometimes the family would come to my office and we would meet there. All right. Somebody said another thing that stuck out to me was, where's the distress button? So I don't think that there was a distress button, and I've been in situations like this, and there wasn't one. So they have staff that monitor the cameras, and and all, like, because I have to get the attention of the control, the people that lock all the doors, and that direct staff where to go. I have to get their attention for them to come. I never assessed someone in that locked facility that was a high risk to harm me. So almost everybody that I met with, they were actually glad to see somebody else. And the students, because sometimes they can't see their family that much, um, they get away. They don't have to go to school because normally they would be in a school setting during the time that I would go and meet with them. And so I never had any issues. The charges of the people I was normally meeting with, sometimes it wasn't anything like murder. It wasn't anything like that. It was normally like property destruction, um they were they were repeated offenders where they had broken the court rules multiple times, sometimes substance too. So those were the types of situations that I would meet with people for. All right. Um, all right. All right. So let me get back to my notes. Um, and she did set a boundary and told him that she was employed by his lawyer. And she reminded him because Jamie lied and said that his lawyer said that he could see her notes. And the psychologist clarified, I talked with your lawyer. He did not say that. You cannot see my notes. And that was an example of triangulation. So, where Jamie was trying to say, me and my lawyer are against, like, we agree that you should show me the notes. And so that's a manipulation tactic. And the thing that helps break triangulation or that type of manipulation tactic is boundaries. And so what she did was she asked, yeah. So I was taking notes, and that really stood out to me because Jamie said, my lawyer, I talked to my lawyer and he said that I could look at your notes. And she was like, I nope, we because this was their second meeting. So I think he probably said that during their first meeting, and she talked with the lawyer, and the lawyer clarified, "No, I would no, he doesn't get to see the notes." And she wasn't writing anything down during the session. Um, right. So would you ever consider working with a child that was suspected of unaliving another child? So, ooh, uh, um, I would need more information. Um, I've worked with victims because it would depend on the type of treatment that that child needed, because that child might need intensive work from a forensic psychologist. So I am not, um, I don't work with violent offenders, and there are people that are trained to work with those types of individuals. I agree, he was very manipulative, and you saw it on display. And to me, I thought she did a decent job besides yelling back and forth with him sometimes. I thought she did a decent job. Would I let a client see my notes? So I don't write anything down that the client couldn't see. So and during a psych eval, clients get a copy of the report anyway. And so, if a client asked, "So what are you typing?" I would tell them. I don't mind. So, yeah, I clients but I don't regularly provide because there's a lot of information in notes, and the notes are for billing purposes. So I write down enough for insurance to pay. I also let clients know. So if I'm working with someone that's having like an active affair on their spouse or something, I don't write in the notes they're having an affair with on like I the way that I write that is, talked about decision making and relationships, boundaries in relationships. Like I write it in a way where if my notes are subpoenaed, that my client can be protected. Also, an ethical thing with notes. Um, and then I have psychotherapy notes that are supposed to be private, but anything could be subpoenaed, and so, yeah. Uh, yes, yes, yes. So, I I've never assessed somebody charged with actually unaliving someone. I have met with parents that were charged with crimes against children, never SA. So I don't work with SA offenders, but I have worked with people that were charged with neglect or physical harm to children. That is work that I've done often, and not to excuse anything, but we often assess their own upbringing. I've worked with people that they grew up in foster care and now their child is growing up in foster care, and we just kind of talk about the cycles and breaking those cycles of trauma. But what's your responsibility if a client discloses that they're doing crimes? So if they are going to commit a crime, I would have to consult, because like if they're going to harm somebody, I have a duty to warn. So if a client tells me that they are going to harm somebody, I have a duty to warn. If a client tells me that they harmed somebody in the past and there's no plan to harm anyone else, there's nothing I can, unless it was harm to a child that's still alive. There's nothing I can do about that. Welcome, welcome. So 'Cause this is what the Menendez brothers, that's what that therapist, I'm bad with names, but I covered that in my coverage of the Menendez brothers show, because Eric wanted to talk about the past crime, and he wasn't aware the therapist was recording all of the sessions, and that therapist lost his license to practice psychology in the state of California, because of that. I did see that the Menendez brothers were resentenced, and I think the judge found that they will be eligible for parole, and so it is what it is. All right. All right. So that's my experience. Because I'm a clinical psychologist, so normally when I'm assessing a situation, people are suspecting, some type of mental health diagnosis, and then I recommend treatment. Because, there have been situations where a juvenile did a crime, and, in our area, they have a treatment program within the juvenile center, and so sometimes they're assessing if that child is a good fit for their treatment program. And if I'm meeting, like most of the time they are. And then I used to do court ordered evaluations. I don't do them as much anymore. But when I did court ordered evaluations, I explained that they do have to participate because one person thought that participation was just them showing up, and I had to set a boundary that no, you actually have to participate. And so it was a whole thing. All right. Let me, because I had another picture of when he stood up to her and he like was in her space. I'm gonna make myself a little smaller for this one because and she's leaning back, like to signal to him, like you're in my space. She does ask him to sit down, but I think he is trying to intimidate her, intentionally. And so, but Lisa, let's say a client, for some reason, I don't know why they would, but let's say a client discloses that they're going to like rob something, and they don't, I don't know. So that's there are some situations that are vague, and I would have to consult my liability insurance because my liability insurance, if I get into a problem, they're the ones that come in to like to defend me to the board or otherwise. And so, yeah, yeah, he was definitely trying to intimidate her, and that's where and she did take a break after he spilled the hot chocolate, and he asked for more hot chocolate, and I think she said that she would get him another one, and I was like, "Oh, no. You just flung hot chocolate across the room, and I am not getting you another hot chocolate." So, how do you protect confidentiality in notes while still having enough data to remember necessary details? Um, and so, I there are some things that I have to write down. So but I write it in a vague way. So if I'm working with um if I'm working with a child and the parents have a high conflict divorce or issues, what I do is I say, client processed conversations with, or like their home situation with mom and with dad. I write it in a way where I know, but there isn't anything that could be used against. And so, ah, permanently ban Netflix from our home. No worries. That's fine. Um, I thought she did a good job keeping her cool during because he was very much in her space and he was trying to intimidate her. But the thing is she's there to assess him for pre-sentencing. And normally, let's see what pre-sentencing report in the UK. Pre-sentencing report in UK. Uh it It's to assist the court in determining the most appropriate sentence for a convicted offender. And to me, his behavior during that interview with her was showing that he continues to be a risk to others. Because if he's not in control, like who's to say he wouldn't do what he did again? And so I definitely thought that his behavior did not help him with that report at all. Oh, she did give him another one. She gave him another one? Oh my gosh. Yeah, like, that would've been it for me. Like, you threw your hot chocolate? Mm-mm, you're not getting a second hot. I'll get you some water, but I'm not giving you something that's lukewarm or hot. I'm just not gonna do it. Yes, so I have my own code, and then I have a in my system, I have what's called so I have my clinical note, and then I have my therapy note, where if I do need to put something specific, that's not attached to the billing note, I will sometimes write something there. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does. There are some times that I have to make, a specific note. So, yeah. All right. Let's keep it going. Um, he thought he was so clever, and, um, she let him know the questions that she had for him. She did ask him what being a man feels like for him, and she asked him about the type of man his father and grandfather are, and, once again set a boundary that he was not in charge and that he could not see her notes, because I think he got upset a second time about wanting to see her notes, and then he talks about his father looking away, that anytime he would F up in sports or his dad would just look away. And looking back at when the dad saw the video of him doing what he did, the dad just like, he didn't say anything. He didn't do anything. The dad, like I said, to me, he looked confused, and I think he didn't know what to do, which is you just saw something traumatic like that, like, and that's your child, and you're thinking like, "How could my child possibly do this?" But I think this pattern of dad not responding, not reacting, and that's where I wondered if he was almost trying to get someone's attention, if he was, and not like I said, like, don't do crimes, uh, but, it was like because he just kept asking his dad, "Do you believe me?" and desperately wanted his dad to believe him, and then we'll get to episode 4, um, and in episode 4, we learned that dad had a history of being physically harmed as a child, and, was definitely ashamed, I think, of his son's behavior, but I think he just didn't know what to do, because I think the dad's father took things too far, but I think Eddie, so Jamie's father is Eddie. I think Eddie didn't know how to give consequences, how to appropriately discipline, how to redirect, or like, "Hey, buddy, try it different," or I don't know, like, it's like he didn't give him feedback. Mm, and that can come off very, very permissive. And for a child like this, I think Jamie desperately needed boundaries. All right. And when Jamie was talking about the dad just looking away, I made a note that his breathing was really pressured and heavy when he was talking about that. And, he talked about not being sporty and lying, like faking an injury to get out of doing sports. And, uh, and the psychologist said that the dad might have been ashamed, and Jamie gets extremely mad, saying she should say that parents shouldn't be ashamed of their children. And Jamie also gets upset that his friend Ryan was able to stay home until his trial, and he had to be detained, but it's completely different charges, it's a completely different situation. And he didn't feel his current placement was appropriate. And he's saying this while being threatening and intimidating to her, in my opinion. Like, he was being menacing, and to me showing that, yeah, he's exactly where he needs to be. um, he mentioned that he wants the interview to end so that she can go home and come back. And I thought that was him trying to control the situation and trying to inconvenience her. So saying, "Let's just stop this and get back." That was him trying to control and inconvenience her. I honestly think he thought she was wasting his time. Um, and yes, this was the point where he yells at her and swipes the hot chocolate. Um, and he says to her, "You do not control what I do. Look at me now." And it seemed like he felt powerful when he was saying that. Security comes in and she says that there isn't a problem. And I would have been like, I need a break. But I think she didn't want him to think that she was scared. Like, I think she was trying to see if she could de-escalate the situation. And from that moment on, you see the security stays right outside the door. Um, because there are times when they pan and you can see the security guard standing right outside the door. Um, all right. Uh, oh yes, and so that's when he asked for another hot chocolate, and she did. She went to go get it. That's so weird. And then she goes to the control room to see if she can watch him, and I don't think they showed that, or I didn't write anything down, because I think they showed her what he was doing, but they didn't show that on the screen, because I was interested. The psychologist in me was like, "Yeah, what is he doing during while she's out of the room?" And there's a camera in there recording him. But they instead focus on the fact that the control room officer doesn't like his job. Like, I wanted to see, like, what was going on camera, but it's fine. Um, she clarifies that she wants to understand his understanding, uh, and, she forgot the hot chocolate. So she did not bring the hot chocolate, and he said that he didn't deserve it, and then he starts shouting. So, she forgot she probably didn't forget the hot chocolate. She did not bring him hot chocolate back. And, she asked him if he's attracted to women, if he wants a girlfriend, and what he would do with a girlfriend, and what he thought was normal at 13 years old. And, then you start hearing that he saw photos of 2 girls in his year that were topless, and how they trusted like, they sent it to one person, and then that person sent it out to the school. And then we learn, because the psychologist asked, "Was Katie one of those girls?" And he was upset that the therapist was able to ask him questions like that, and that she was asking him questions about, what did he like? Because I think they were trying to assess, was there a sexual nature to the crime, or what they were doing with that. And so he is not honest at all, because his story keeps changing, and it's hard to know, because I even what he said, I don't know if that was the whole truth. Because I do think that he was lying, and he wanted to be viewed in a certain way. And we'll get to that a little bit later. The picture was passed around on Snapchat. He doesn't think girls are attracted to him, so that's when you get into him thinking he's ugly, and he desperately wanted the therapist to say, "You're not ugly. You're cute." I don't know, like, because he said, but, like, she's there to assess him. She's not there to change his mind. And so that's where I don't know if he really thought he was ugly, if he really thought those things, or if he was trying to fish for a compliment from her. But he likely did struggle with self-esteem. But once again, like, he just keeps going back and forth with wanting the psychologist to comfort him, and all of that. Um, uh, all right. And so he gets upset again, knocks over his chair, tells her to F off, and and that she's putting words in his mouth. And uh and he sits down, and he calmly says, "Are you going now?" And so his emotions seemed they didn't seem deep. So when he was upset, it was almost like it was a show. And I do think it was for intimidation. And and that might have been why she pushed him a little bit more, and why she stayed in the room with him. I do think that he could have been a risk of harming her. But the guard, there were people there to make sure, because he kept doing things that were close, like he threw the chair, he tossed the hot chocolate, but he didn't do anything directed towards her besides verbally. But I do still think that he was a risk to potentially do something. Yeah, yeah. He went on about, yeah, like it was just, didn't she redirect the ugly question by saying, "Do you think you're ugly?" Probably. Um, and I think that's when he got mad and he said, "Shouldn't you tell me that I'm not ugly?" And yes, like, the show was done incredibly well, and this was my favorite episode. They start getting into his Instagram, into the comments that Katie made, and that 80/20 rule, and how many people liked her comments. And then that's when he talks about, you can't trust videos, fake news. I should have killed her, but I didn't. All I did, and then he pauses, look at you, all hopeful, like I'm going to say something important. And that's where, like, I was getting antisocial traits, psychopathic type vibes, because the back and forth, everything that he was doing, it seemed to be trying to play this game and this dance in a situation that was incredibly serious and important. And so, um, uh, and so then it comes out that Jamie ran into Katie and asked if she would go with him to the fair. And after the whole picture debacle, Jamie says, "I thought she might be weak. She might like me." And then so she ends up turning him down for the fair. She laughed and said, "I'm not that desperate." And um and he once again keeps denying it. That night, "I didn't touch her. I had a knife. She was scared. I didn't do it." When we all saw the video. Most boys would have touched her, but I didn't. That makes me better, don't you think? And then once again, like, he's trying to get her, and Dominique said validation and approval. The whole thing was just, oh, like I said, episode 3. And then he just starts eating the sandwich. And then he says, "I didn't mean any of that. I'm tired. I'm so tired. I didn't kill her." And then the therapist asks, "Do you understand what death is?" And he says, "I didn't do it." And then the therapist says, "This is our last session. Take advantage of any other therapy resources that are available to you." And he starts getting upset. She's like, "Thanks for your time. Thanks for your honesty. All I'm doing is advising the judge." And then he asks her, "Can I ask you something? Do you like me?" And she says, "I was here as a professional." Um, and then he gets upset. "You don't even like me a bit. Tell my dad I'm all right." And she did seem shaken up after the interview, because it was intense. And Dominique mentioned that the eating the sandwich seemed to be him regressing to a childlike state. And because he was 13, to me, I thought it was more like control, or him, because he didn't have the hot chocolate. Because maybe if he had had the hot chocolate, maybe he would have taken a sip of the hot chocolate or something. The tantrum was just, it was, because he ends up yelling, screaming, extremely upset that that is the last session, and it was a lot. Episode 4, we learn, it's Dad's birthday, and somebody vandalizes his work van with the word, let me see, I think it's "in you." Let me find what it is. Do, 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 do. But I think it's y'all know me in words. Nounce. and that is, UK slang for the P file word that we use here in the US. And so the dad is, of course, upset. They go to the hardware store. The whole episode 4, you're following dad. You learn that dad had a history of physical harm, and, um dad ends up kind of showing some problems with anger and aggression, I thought, because now understandably, dad is upset that he thinks some kids have vandalized his truck, but he, like, goes to physically attack one, and to me, it wasn't for sure that that was a person that was involved with any of that. The dad just seemed to have this energy and anger work built up, and it was a lot. So that's where, I don't know that dad managed his anger appropriately. Once again, not to blame, but just under trying to understand this situation. Fictional Netflix situation, but still. Uh Dad mentions that he couldn't look at Jamie when he messed up. And the parents, because mom and dad have a conversation about, just not knowing if they did the right thing. And the mom didn't see the video, but dad saw the video of the incident. And, dad says, "I believed him, and then I saw the tape." And so that let me know from the moment dad saw the tape, he knew what his son had done. And, and no parent is perfect, and so that's where, I like to share resources. Let's see. And the link to this is down in the description. Let me make myself a little smaller. And so this is risk and protective factors for harm. And so, risk factors, youth violence is not caused by any one thing, but it's a combination of things within the individual, community, societal, other relationships, often parent family type relationships and dynamics. Risk factors that may increase the likelihood of experiencing or perpetrating youth violence. Um, and so history of being victimized themselves, ADHD or learning disorders, involvement in substances, poor behavioral control, deficits in cognitive or information processing, high emotional stress, history of treatment for, and this is a long list, okay? So just because somebody has these things doesn't mean that they will, but these are just risk factors, okay? Antisocial beliefs and attitudes, exposure to violence and conflict within the family. And so that's why it's really important that the adults model healthy conflict resolution and they model healthy relationships. And then I do think being aware of what kids are doing online. I think that's really important. Authoritarian parenting. So authoritarian is all discipline and no love. That can be a risk factor. Harsh, lax, or inconsistent disciplinary factors. So lax would be the permissive parenting style. Um, uh, Parental substance use or criminality, poor family functioning, poor monitoring or supervision, association with delinquent peers, involvement in gangs, social rejection by peers, poor academic performance, low commitment to school or school failure. And then there are community risk factors. So being in a community with high rates of violence or crime, diminished economic opportunities, being in a community with high unemployment, um, being in a poorer community, unstable housing, communities with few community activities. So, like positive outlets for kids if they don't have that. Protective factors can be high IQ, not always, but high GPA, educational aspirations, future goals, highly developed social skills or competencies, religious beliefs, and but not the culty ones. Lori Vallow, looking at you. Relationship risk factors, connectedness, or protective factors, relationship protective factors, being connected to family or adults outside the family, ability to discuss problems with parents, perceived parental expectations about school performance are high, frequent shared activities with parents, and then that one goes on. And then I do have a link to this as well that talks about that youth violence between the ages of 10 to 24, that um, homicide is the third leading cause of death for young people, 10 to 24. And these statistics, I think this was February of 2024. That's when these statistics came out. And that it can happen in any community, urban, suburban, rural, and tribal. And they just have some information, and I have the link to this listed down below. Let me know if y'all have any questions. We are getting to the time where the kiddo is going to come up and ask for food. So put what in chat? Deacon Fatal, what would you like for me to put in chat? I'm not sure. Okay. Would it even be possible for parents a situation like that to manage without therapy? No. So I would definitely recommend if a parent had a child, because I felt bad for Jamie's sister in this series, and for the family. I did feel bad for them. Sometimes in situations like that, families they move. They're not able to stay in the community because forever it's like your child did this to somebody else in the community, and just seeing the parents, even though the parents weren't directly involved, that can often be hard. And so, um, all right. Yes, glad to have this. The study I mentioned. No worry. Which study? So, at the resources I shared from the CDC, both of those are in the description. Okay. I always provide those in the description. Oh, wow. Dominique mentioned the school was so disconnected. And I heard that it was an accurate representation of schools now in the UK. Wow. Um, I know in the US, they're doing phone bans, and that does seem to be working in some ways, especially for middle and elementary school. In high school, they're still able to use their phones during like lunch or during certain times of the day. Um, uh, but because sometimes things are happening right in class, like kids are like, so we used to pass notes. When you pass notes, you had to kind of be in the same class, you had to pass the person. With phones, something can be disruptive, or something can be in a group chat that's affecting multiple classrooms, that's affecting multiple things all at the same time. Um, and so I've definitely seen that. This year was our first year of schools trying to restrict phones. And I'd be interested to see like what teachers think and how that went this year. I know some teachers have like a box where when students come in, they put their phone inside of a like a box. Um yeah, teachers, I don't know how teachers do it. Yep. Um And so I appreciate you all. Thank y'all for this recommendation. This Saturday, I am going to talk about the sister wives. The last three episodes have focused on the death of Garrison, and I wanna talk about alcohol and depression because and I think I've done a similar video where I've talked about that a little bit, but I wanna dedicate a whole video talking about, depression and alcohol, in memory and honor of Garrison, and, we're doing that for mental health awareness because I wanted to think of a topic to do, and so that's what I'm gonna do. If you don't watch the episodes, it's fine. I'm not really gonna. I didn't take notes during any of it, but I just wanted to watch it so that I could catch up. And then after, because I think they dedicated 3 episodes to just how the family was coping and grieving, the loss of Garrison, and then they're gonna be back to drama between the sister. I don't know, they're gonna get back to things as usual a little bit later. Toward the end of the scene where he admits that what he was thinking before he met the girl, what do those final yes, no questions mean? It was like he triggered some specific clinical response. Let me see if I have that part in my notes because I thought she was asking like, did you like her? Were you attracted to her? The psychologist seemed to be asking those questions, um, because he didn't admit to doing the thing. And I forgot to mention that at the end of episode 4 that Jamie decides to plead guilty. Excuse me. So he finally decides to plead guilty to the charges because him pleading not guilty, uh and even pleading guilty, that doesn't mean that he'll get a less of a sentence, but, Jamie decided to plead guilty to the crime, but he was on camera, there was no way for him to get away with it. Like, there was absolutely no way. And, but he tells his dad, and he's on speaker with mom and sister in the car, and that does, I think, upset him a little because he hangs up pretty quickly because he didn't know that he was on speaker. But, he lets his dad know that he's gonna plead guilty, and he did this on dad's birthday. Like, poor dad, like, but it's ugh, but, he ended up doing that. He was recorded on so CCTV is that, like, public cameras. He was recorded doing the thing, and yeah. Alright, alright. Um, he starts describing how he approached her because he thought she would be weak. Yes. So I mentioned that part. I don't know. Um, but to me, that was more of the he didn't think that she would say yes to him if she wasn't weak. And I think he had misguided views on women and girls, and it was a little problematic. Um, and people should be able to say no. And because she said no, he he did what he did, and that's not okay. And so, I appreciate y'all recommending this. If y'all have other recommendations, things that y'all would like for me to take a look at, you can always put them in the comments on the regular video, and I will see y'all next time, Saturday. Have a good one. Bye.